My friend, listen closely. Wealth doesn't start in your hands, it starts in your mouth. Before gold ever enters your pocket, God wants His word to enter your spirit. There is a psalm, a divine declaration, a spiritual key that has the power to shift your atmosphere, break poverty thinking, and unlock the abundance God already prepared for you. And that psalm is this: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Psalm 23, 1 now. Don't just read it, speak it. Don't just speak it, believe it. Don't just believe it, expect it. When you say, "I shall not want," you are not repeating poetry, you are activating a law. You are aligning your life with divine supply. You are declaring that lack has no legal right to your future. You see, the Word of God is voice-activated. It responds when spoken from a heart full of faith. Say it with boldness. The Lord is my shepherd, guidance is mine. Provision is mine, overflow is mine. When you speak this psalm, you are announcing to heaven and hell, "My days of scraping, struggling, and surviving are over. I walk in divine abundance." Why does this work? Because when your mouth agrees with God, your life begins to follow. Wealth is not unlocked by wishing, it is unlocked by agreement. By speaking the same words God has spoken over you. Each time you declare this psalm, your mind becomes renewed, your spirit becomes strengthened, and your decisions begin to align with prosperity instead of fear. Say it daily, say it with conviction, say it until your inner world changes, because when your inner world changes, your outer world has no choice but to follow. My friend, if the Lord is your shepherd, then lack is not your destiny. Abundance is, wisdom is, wealth is. Now speak that psalm, and unlock what heaven has already placed in your name. Wealth never begins with coins, currency, or opportunities. It begins with the unseen power of the spoken word, and when a person declares, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," they are not reciting a verse, but activating a spiritual principle that shifts the entire atmosphere around their life, because this psalm is more than comfort. It is a covenant that announces divine provision, guidance, and abundance. When you speak it with faith, you release a force that begins to work in your thinking, your decisions, your attitude, and even your circumstances, gradually pulling you out of limitation and aligning you with the abundance God has assigned to your destiny. Every time you say those words, your mind is being retrained to expect provision instead of shortage, opportunity instead of blockage, and breakthrough instead of delay, because faith comes by hearing, even when the hearing is your own voice speaking what God already said. You begin to dissolve the strongholds of fear, doubt, and financial insecurity that have been built over years, sometimes over generations. You step into a realm where you stop seeing yourself as a struggler and start seeing yourself as someone guided by a divine shepherd who never abandons, never withholds, and never leaves his people in lack. But this transformation is not instant. It is cultivated through consistent, intentional confession. Each time the words leave your mouth, they plant seeds in your subconscious, reminding you that your source is not the economy, not your job, not your environment, not your family background. Your source is the Lord. And when He is your source, your supply is guaranteed. This psalm teaches you to stop looking at life through the eyes of scarcity and start looking through the lens of spiritual abundance. When you speak it repeatedly, your spirit becomes stronger than your circumstances, and the inner strength pushes you to make wiser decisions, pursue opportunities you used to fear, break habits that kept you stuck, and think in ways that attract increase rather than repel it. Saying, "I shall not want," is not arrogance, it is agreement with divine truth. It is choosing to side with God instead of your problems. You begin to feel a holy boldness rise inside you, a certainty that your needs will be met, your steps will be guided, and your hands will prosper in what they do. The more you speak it, the more you start noticing ideas flowing, creativity awakening, clarity forming, and doors beginning to open where previously there were only walls. Wealth is not merely money. It is mental strength, emotional peace, spiritual alignment, and wise action. And this psalm activates all four. You start realizing that lack is not your identity. It was just a temporary season. You understand that abundance is not a distant dream. It is a divine right. You move from waiting for a miracle to becoming a participant in your own breakthrough. And as this inner shift grows, the outer world inevitably responds. People who speak these words with faith find that they walk with more confidence, plan with clearer vision, handle challenges with calmer hearts, and pursue goals with a renewed sense of purpose. What you speak becomes what you believe. What you believe becomes what you expect. And what you expect becomes what you attract. This is how spiritual laws work. They are activated by faith-filled words. And when you speak this psalm, you are not begging for wealth. You are unlocking divine provision that has been waiting to manifest in your life. You are aligning with a higher reality where your needs are met. Your path is guided, and your future is secure, not because of human strength, but because of the shepherd who promised. You shall not want, and his promises never fail. When a person declares the words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," they are not merely repeating a familiar verse, but unlocking a spiritual law that has the power to reshape their inner world and outer circumstances. These words carry the weight of divine assurance, reminding the speaker that guidance, provision, and protection are not things they must fight for alone. They are gifts provided by a higher source. When spoken consistently, this declaration begins to rewrite the internal scripts that have been shaped by fear, lack, or generational struggle. It teaches the mind to expect provision rather than shortage, and to move with confidence rather than anxiety. Every time this psalm is spoken, it plants seeds of abundance in the subconscious, gradually dissolving old beliefs that whisper, "You are not enough. You will never have enough. You are destined to struggle." As these limiting beliefs weaken, new ones rise, beliefs rooted in trust, expectancy, and divine alignment. The statement becomes a daily reminder that supply is not dependent on the economy, the job market, or past failures, but on a divine shepherd who leads with purpose. Speaking this psalm builds faith, and faith activates spiritual laws that attract wisdom, opportunities, and breakthroughs. It prepares the heart for increase, sharpens the mind to recognize doors that were always there, and strengthens the spirit to move boldly rather than hesitantly. As faith grows, fear loses authority, and the individual begins to see themselves not as a victim of life's challenges, but as someone guided by an unfailing source of provision. Over time, this declaration does more than shift thinking. It reshapes action. When someone truly believes they shall not want, they begin to act with clarity, discipline, and purpose. Worry is replaced by strategy, confusion is replaced by direction, and hesitation is replaced by courage. The person starts making decisions from a place of abundance rather than desperation. New ideas begin to flow, creativity awakens, and the confidence to pursue opportunities grows stronger. Wealth, in this sense, is not simply the accumulation of money, but a harmony of spiritual confidence, emotional stability, mental clarity, and wise behavior. This psalm empowers all four. It creates an inner atmosphere where peace quiets fear, faith overrides doubt, and vision becomes sharper than obstacles. As this inner transformation continues, the outer world responds. Doors open, connections form, and solutions appear where none existed before. The individual realizes they are no longer waiting for a miracle. They are participating in their own break through by aligning words, thoughts, and actions with divine truth. The more faithfully they speak this psalm, the more their life aligns with its promise. They begin to walk with a sense of security that is not shaken by circumstances and a confidence that their needs will be met in every season. In this way, the verse becomes more than a prayer. It becomes a lifestyle of faith that unlocks abundance, activates purpose, and leads the person into a future defined not by lack, but by divine provision. When a person speaks the words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," they are doing more than reciting a line. They are aligning themselves with a spiritual principle that has transformed lives for generations. These words carry authority because they shift the focus from personal limitation to divine supply. Speaking them regularly begins a quiet transformation in the inner world, where fears of scarcity, uncertainty, and financial struggle often take root. The declaration acts like a spiritual reset, reminding the heart that guidance, protection, and provision are not random events, but promises anchored in divine faithfulness. Every repetition strengthens the mind to think beyond survival and to envision possibilities that once felt unreachable. It helps break cycles of negative thinking, replacing them with expectancy and confidence. With each spoken word, the individual trains their spirit to believe that they are led, cared for, and provided for in ways both seen and unseen. This shift creates a foundation for internal peace, which becomes the soil where new levels of abundance can grow. As the mind adjusts to this truth, behavior begins to change in subtle but powerful ways. When a person truly believes they shall not want, their decisions are no longer driven by fear, panic, or desperation. They start acting from a place of stability and clarity. Ideas that were once ignored begin to surface because the mind is no longer clouded by worry. Confidence grows because the heart is anchored in spiritual assurance rather than external uncertainty. This confidence influences how they speak, how they plan, how they pursue opportunities, and how they handle setbacks. The verse becomes a compass, guiding them away from self-sabotage, poor decisions, and limiting beliefs, and leading them toward discipline, wisdom, and purposeful action. They begin to see their life as guided rather than chaotic, supported rather than abandoned, and filled with possibilities rather than barriers. This inner alignment inspires boldness, the courage to take steps toward goals, to try new things, to invest in growth, and to believe that doors will open. In this way, the psalm becomes not only a spiritual declaration, but also a practical motivator that shapes everyday choices. Over time, the continuous declaration of this psalm creates a profound connection between inner belief and outer manifestation. The inner peace it instills begins affecting relationships, finances, work habits, and overall direction. New opportunities start to appear not because of luck, but because a mind rooted in faith can perceive what a fearful mind often overlooks. The person becomes more attentive to solutions, more open to learning, and more resilient when challenges arise. They approach life with a sense of assurance that their needs will be met, that provision will arrive on time, and that setbacks are temporary, not final. This stability invites prosperity because abundance flows naturally toward a heart that is calm, focused, and spiritually aligned. Over time, the individual realizes that wealth is not merely money, but a state of inner wholeness that guides them toward wise action and consistent growth. The declaration, "I shall not want," becomes a lived reality, shaping their perspective, sustaining their courage, and unlocking the abundance that was always meant for them. When a person declares the words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," They are not making a casual statement, but stepping into a powerful spiritual alignment that changes how they see themselves, their challenges, and their future. These words shift the center of trust from human ability to divine guidance, creating an internal confidence that wipes away the fear of lack. Speaking this verse consistently begins to reprogram the mind, replacing thoughts of limitation with assurance that every need will be met at the right time. It reminds the heart that life is not a lonely journey, but one led by a source of wisdom far greater than anything the world can provide. This understanding creates a calm strength that dissolves anxiety and prepares the spirit to receive abundance with gratitude rather than suspicion. As the verse settles deeper into the heart, it becomes a foundation of hope, reminding a person daily that they are under care, under direction, and under protection that never fails. This inner shift soon begins to shape a person's perspective in powerful ways. When someone truly believes they shall not want, they start viewing opportunities differently. Obstacles that once felt intimidating begin to look like temporary challenges that can be overcome with patience and faith. Decisions that were previously clouded by fear become clearer because the mind is no longer dominated by worry about scarcity. The verse encourages a sense of stability that influences how a person plans, dreams, and prepares for the future. It creates mental clarity, helping them recognize potential in places they once overlooked. This clarity becomes the spark that leads to wise choices, renewed determination, and a deeper sense of purpose. Because they no longer expect lack, they begin to expect growth, and this expectancy attracts new ideas, new connections, and new pathways. The verse becomes a guiding voice that leads them toward discipline and away from impulsive decisions that sabotage progress. As the declaration becomes a daily habit, it starts transforming behavior as well. A person who believes they shall not want begins to act with confidence rather than hesitation. They approach responsibilities with a steady heart, knowing they are supported every step of the way. This assurance strengthens their work ethic, sharpens their focus, and fuels their resilience. They find themselves more patient during waiting seasons and more courageous in moments requiring bold action. This kind of faith births creativity, helping them see solutions where others only see problems. It motivates them to take steps they once feared, steps toward learning new skills, pursuing better opportunities, setting higher goals, and investing in personal growth. Even in difficult moments, this belief acts like an anchor, preventing discouragement from pulling them backward. Their actions start to reflect the confidence of someone who knows their future is secure, and their needs will always be met. Over time, the inner transformation created by this psalm begins to show in the outer world. People who declare these words with faith often experience gradual but undeniable shifts in their circumstances. They find themselves making wiser financial decisions, building healthier relationships, and attracting opportunities that match their renewed mindset. They become more aware of divine timing, more grateful for small blessings, and more resilient in handling adversity. The verse instills a level of peace that invites prosperity, because abundance flows more easily toward a heart that is calm, focused, and spiritually aligned. As this peace strengthens, it influences every area of life: speech, attitude, habits, and expectations. Eventually, the declaration, "I shall not want," stops being a hope and becomes a reality. The person begins to live with the inner wholeness, outer stability, and spiritual confidence that naturally attract both emotional and material abundance. Their life becomes a reflection of the truth they have spoken, guided, supplied, supported, and continually lifted toward greater levels of blessing. When someone speaks the words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," they step into a powerful spiritual truth that begins to reshape how they think, feel, and perceive their life. This declaration carries the weight of assurance, telling the heart that it is not navigating life alone, but under the guidance of a divine source that never fails. Repeating these words consistently begins to soften the grip of fear, especially the fear of lack, insecurity, or not having enough. It replaces the noise of worry with a quiet confidence that every need will be met at the right time. The moment these words are spoken with belief, the mind starts to shift from panic to peace, from doubt to trust. The person becomes more aware of divine support, more open to guidance, and more capable of seeing life not through the lens of struggle, but through the promise of provision. This inner shift is the first step in unlocking a life of abundance. As these words take root in the heart, they begin to rearrange a person's internal landscape. Thoughts that once circled around scarcity begin to lose their power, creating space for thoughts of hope, growth, and possibility. When the mind truly believes that it shall not want, it starts recognizing opportunities that were previously hidden behind clouds of worry. The person becomes less reactive and more reflective, which allows them to make decisions from a place of clarity instead of confusion. This clarity leads to a stronger sense of purpose, guiding them to focus on what matters rather than being distracted by fear. The psalm becomes a lens through which they view their circumstances, reminding them that challenges are temporary and that guidance is always available. Slowly, they begin to expect good things rather than fear disappointment, and this shift in expectation shapes their entire outlook. As the belief strengthens, it begins shaping behavior. A person who trusts that they shall not want walks with a different energy, an energy of assurance, calmness, and quiet confidence. They are no longer driven by desperation or fear, so their actions become more intentional, patient, and strategic. They begin to take steps that align with growth, whether that means pursuing new skills, exploring better opportunities, or letting go of habits that hold them back. Their courage increases because they no longer feel alone in facing their challenges. This courage encourages them to step out of comfort zones and into possibilities that once seemed intimidating. They develop resilience, understanding that even setbacks have solutions, and this resilience helps them keep moving forward without being easily discouraged. Their behavior becomes a reflection of inner stability. Over time, this internal and behavioral transformation begins to show outwardly in noticeable ways. Relationships improve because the person communicates with more peace and less pressure. Work life improves because they operate with focus rather than fear. Finances shift because they make wiser decisions, guided by clarity rather than panic. They begin attracting opportunities that match the strength and confidence developing inside them. Because they believe their needs will be met, they no longer chase after things anxiously. Instead, they move with purpose and allow blessings to unfold naturally. This creates an environment where abundance can grow, because abundance flows toward people who are emotionally centered, spiritually aligned, and mentally clear. The peace that comes from this declaration becomes a natural magnet for prosperity. Eventually, the declaration, "I shall not want," becomes more than something they say. It becomes something they live. The words shape their identity, their decisions, and their future. The person begins to walk with the calm assurance that provision will always come, guidance will always be available, and abundance will always find them at the right time. They realize that wealth is not only measured in money, but also in peace, wisdom, stability, and purpose. This psalm becomes a constant reminder that they are guided, supported, and supplied by a source far greater than any challenge they face. Over time, their life reflects the truth of these spoken words. They become more confident, more focused, more grateful, and more aligned with the abundance meant for them. The simple act of speaking this verse unlocks a deep transformation that touches every part of their life, turning fear into faith, confusion into clarity, and lack into lasting abundance. When a person begins to speak the words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," they are stepping into a powerful truth that gently reshapes their inner world. These words act like a spiritual anchor, calming the storms of fear and insecurity that often dominate the mind. By declaring them daily, the person starts to release the belief that they must struggle alone, and instead embraces the assurance that they are guided, supported, and cared for. This realization softens the grip of anxiety and replaces it with a steady inner peace. The heart begins to trust in a source greater than circumstances, and this trust becomes the foundation for every form of abundance. Speaking this verse becomes a way of rewiring the mind, reminding it that lack is not the final story and that provision is already being prepared. As this truth settles deeper, the person's thinking begins to shift in noticeable ways. Thoughts that once revolved around scarcity, fear, and uncertainty begin to lose influence. Instead, new thoughts of hope, possibility, and expectation begin to take root. The verse becomes a lens that helps them interpret challenges in a new light, allowing them to see opportunities where they once saw obstacles. They start to trust that guidance will come, that paths will open, and that solutions will appear at the right time. This new level of thinking gives them the strength to let go of limiting beliefs and embrace a mindset that invites growth. The more they speak the verse, the more they believe it, and the more their mind aligns with a future shaped by abundance rather than fear. Once the mind shifts, behavior inevitably follows. A person who believes they will not be left in want acts differently from someone who fears constant shortage. Their decisions become more intentional, thoughtful, and grounded. They develop patience, understanding that not everything must be rushed. They also become courageous, realizing that they are supported as they step into new opportunities. The verse inspires them to take actions that reflect confidence, whether that means upgrading their skills, pursuing opportunities they once avoided, or releasing habits that kept them stuck. Even their daily choices begin to reflect a quiet strength, because they no longer act from desperation, but from assurance. Their behavior becomes a reflection of the peace growing inside them. As their inner and behavioral changes deepen, their outer world begins to transform as well. With a calm and clear mind, they start noticing opportunities they once overlooked. They respond to challenges with wisdom rather than panic. They build healthier relationships because they are no longer projecting fear or insecurity onto others. Their work becomes more focused, their decisions become more strategic, and their presence becomes more steady. This stability becomes attractive to people, opportunities, and resources. The verse has strengthened their inner environment, and now their outer environment begins to shift in response. Little by little, life becomes more ordered, more meaningful, and more open to abundance. Over time, the person begins to see that this declaration does more than provide comfort. It creates transformation. They start to recognize how their expectations shape their experiences. Because they no longer expect lack, they no longer invite it. Because they expect provision, their mind naturally gravitates toward wise choices that support growth. because they expect guidance. They trust their intuition more deeply. Their thoughts, words, and actions all start moving in the same direction, working together to build a future of stability, purpose, and increase. They realize that abundance is not something they chase, it's something they align with. Eventually, the words "I shall not want" become a lived reality rather than just a spoken phrase. The person embodies the confidence, peace, and clarity that this verse promises. Their life begins to reflect an inner wholeness that naturally attracts prosperity in all forms: spiritual, emotional, relational, and financial. They understand that wealth is not only measured in material things, but in peace of mind, strength of spirit, and clarity of purpose. The verse becomes the foundation of this transformation, guiding them every day toward a life where fear no longer rules and abundance flows freely. Through consistent declaration, they step into a life shaped by trust, supported by faith, and filled with blessings that grow from the inside out. When a person begins to speak the words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," they activate a truth that starts transforming the deepest parts of their inner world. These words carry a calming power that begins to quiet the anxieties that have been built through years of struggle, fear, or uncertainty. As they continue speaking it, their heart gradually shifts from relying solely on their own strength to trusting a greater source of guidance and provision. This growing trust becomes a foundation that steadies the mind during difficult seasons and reassures the heart that lack is not where their story ends. The verse becomes a gentle reminder that they are not abandoned but cared for, not lost but guided. As the verse settles deeper within them, it begins restructuring their internal thoughts. The mind slowly moves away from imagining worst-case scenarios and starts developing an expectation for guidance, opportunities, and solutions. Old patterns of fear and scarcity loosen their grip as thoughts of abundance and possibility grow stronger. They begin viewing challenges through a clearer lens, understanding that obstacles do not stop their journey but shape it. The verse becomes a mental filter that pushes away discouraging thoughts and welcomes thoughts of hope, strength, and provision. The more they meditate on it, the more their inner dialogue becomes filled with confidence instead of doubt. This renewed thinking eventually reshapes their emotional life. Emotional burdens that once felt heavy begin to lighten as the person learns to rest in the promise of not lacking. Anxiety fades because they no longer believe they must carry every burden alone. Stress reduces because they recognize that help, wisdom, and provision are always near. A sense of stability begins to form in their heart, allowing them to face life with a calm mind and a steady spirit. Even in difficult moments, the verse acts like a soothing voice reminding them that solutions are on the way. This emotional stability becomes a powerful anchor in their daily life. As their emotions settle and their mind strengthens, their behavior begins to reflect this internal shift. A person who believes they shall not want naturally becomes more confident in their decisions and more disciplined in their actions. They no longer rush out of fear, but move forward with steady purpose. They take opportunities more seriously because they trust that their steps are guided. They begin investing time into growth, pursuing new skills and stepping into goals they once avoided. Even their interactions with others improve because they operate from confidence rather than insecurity. Their behavior begins to reveal a quiet strength that others notice. With this new behavior, changes in the outer world start becoming visible. The person begins to attract better opportunities because their mindset is clearer and their actions more aligned with purpose. They make wiser financial, relational, and personal decisions because they operate with stability instead of desperation. They notice blessings they used to overlook, recognizing how guidance shows up in small ways every day. Their environment gradually shifts as they create space for peace, productivity, and growth. What once felt chaotic begins to organize itself around the confidence growing within them. As these transformations continue, the person begins to realize that this verse is more than spiritual comfort. It is a pathway to personal development and abundance. Their expectations change, and as expectations change, outcomes change. They begin taking steps that align with success because their inner world is no longer battling fear. They trust timing, trust guidance, and trust the unfolding process of their life. This trust becomes a powerful energy that pushes them toward growth, resilience, and progress. Their daily choices now reflect the belief that they are supported and supplied, and these choices open doors that fear once kept closed. Eventually, the words "I shall not want" become a reality lived from the inside out. The person not only speaks it, they embody it. Their mind carries peace, their heart carries confidence, and their actions carry purpose. The verse becomes the foundation that holds their life steady and invites abundance to flow naturally. They begin experiencing wealth in its truest form, not only financially, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and relationally. Through consistent declaration, they grow into a version of themselves that is stronger, clearer, more grateful, and more aligned with the abundance they were always meant to experience.